You may be aware of the fact that from time to time there's a minor or sort of political problem that appears in this country and needs to be understood. The following speaker is Ken Cousens of Pagosa Springs, Colorado. And in the program we didn't note that he is the author of a book, 1,000 Townships, which has a tremendous amount of research in it, telling about what might be done and what some suggestions are. And that book is available here, and your table is, it's over here in one of these tables, so you can view that after he's finished. But now we need to know his analysis of the situation. His title is, and I thought I had it down, but it's a synthesis of worldview. All right, a synthesis worldview. First time with us, Ken Cousens. He'd like a warm, nice applause. Welcome, if you would, please.
Thank you. I'm going to start with a poem. Is this picking up? Okay. I wrote this poem in 1985 on the 4th of July. And I was on a boat in San Francisco Bay watching the fireworks, and I was holding my 10-month-old daughter, and I was reflecting upon the nature of the celebration, the nature of what the United States had become, and the men who controlled the United States in the world. And so I wrote this poem. Actually, my daughter and I wrote it together. Her name is Elisa, and the poem is called Elisa's Poem. Life is soft as a little girl. It is warm and soft in the folds of my daddy's arms, strong and firm, deep in the small places we share, the heartbeats that are close and reassuring. Life is sweet and simple and pure, and his arms cover the world, holding me, drifting, sleeping. Yes, life is soft as a little girl. Can it be that I am wise in this world, soft and wise as a little girl? You men who are cold and heartless and shallow, who control the world and threaten its destruction, can it be that all of your sophistication and your sophistry has blinded you to my wisdom? Are you not humbled to know that I speak more truth about life with the tiny sounds of my joy than you could ever hope to know? Are you not ashamed to compare your avarice and your dark ways with my open and unquestioning arms that seek to embrace the world, its love and its pleasures, not open to gather in, to insulate and control as are yours? Did you forget, gentlemen, that you are bound to die? Did you expect your sudden piety to exonerate your deathbed? Did you forget on the day you were born how bright a new life was meant to be? Don't you stop to think that your actions are but a passing shadow on the strength of life and the purity in the softness of a little girl. So my talk is a world synthesis perspective, which, as Dean said, I've spent the last 8 years studying law and history, but that is sort of on top of what I've done for the last 30 years, which has been exploring the entire spectrum of life on planet Earth. That exploration has been internal since a very early age. My desire was to understand what life was about on this planet, and to understand why it was the way it was, why it seemed that we had so much love that we had in amongst ourselves, and it was so difficult for us to actually express it. And the systems on the planet seemed to be counter to that need and that desire of so many people to express the love that they had. So as a little boy, I used to like to do jigsaw puzzles. And recently I was thinking about my talk here, and I realized that what I've been doing my whole life is a very, very large jigsaw puzzle. And the goal of the jigsaw puzzle is to synthesize all of this information that we're all seeking to gather. We're all jigsaw puzzle doers. And as we go through life and we pick up all this information that's being shared here this weekend, we're trying to put it together and have a synthesis, a synergy to understand what it's all about. So to start, I'm going to share 3 statements or 3 aphorisms with you. Excuse me. And I want you to think about these and take them in. The first 2 are statements that I coined, and the last comes from the Bible. And these are the foundations of what I'm going to talk about today. So the first one is, that which is broken can never be fixed. That which is real can never be broken. Focus on what's real, and the rest will fade away. The second statement is, there are no enemies, only opportunities. And the third one is, the devil knows not who he serves. So I need to give you a few definitions. First of all, I use the word devil. I don't believe in the devil. And I don't necessarily even believe in evil. But what I define divine or divinity as counterdistinctive to evil or the devil is divinity is life-enhancing. It's as simple as that. Whatever action we as divine beings interact with this world that is life-affirming and life-enhancing is divinity. It's the expression of divinity through our vehicle, who we are, embodied, incarnate, as divine beings, as creator beings here in a material world. And the opposite of that, of course, is life negating. And it is as simple as that anything that is life negating is what we might consider evil. The rest is a lot of religious bullshit, if you'll allow me that. So that's the starting point of where I want to talk about. And I'm also going to give you one more system of thought. It's what I call whole system energetics. And a whole system is a unit of consciousness, no matter how big or how small. And it's consciousness, but it can also embody a physical form. So that can be an atom, or it can be a galaxy. It can be a human organism, a human life, or it can be a planet. And the nature of a whole system is that it is not separate from life itself. It is interactive. So a whole system can interface with the smaller whole systems within it, or the larger whole systems that it is contained within. So my heart or my liver is a whole system, contained within the physical organism of my human body, which is a whole system. My life on this earth is interacting with the whole system of the earth as a consciousness embodied in a planetary form. And the earth itself is a whole system within a solar system, which is in a galaxy, and so forth. And there are 4 elements of a whole system. 1 is it is self-responsible. 2, it is self-directive. 3, it is self-corrective. And 4, it is self-regenerative. And in my study of law, and I'm sure you've heard some of the buzzwords in the last 5 or so years about sovereignty and the patriot movement and all of that, the issue is, what is sovereignty? In my way of seeing it, sovereignty is embodying who we are as a whole system. Because if I am self-responsible, If I am self-directive, then there is no outside authority. If I am self-corrective, there is no need for outside law to tell me what to do, as long as I honor the life force in other whole systems, whatever that may be, whether it's the earth, the universe, another human being, or whatever. And the fourth is the most important, perhaps. It's self-regenerative, which means that I am my own source, and I am in direct relationship with that source. Therefore, I do not have to draw on another system negatively or to negate its life force in order to sustain my life force. The name of the game on this planet is to re-embody ourselves within that context, to become a whole system. When we do that, the rest starts recreating around us, because we are creator beings. And the whole name of the name of the game of everything that's been discussed here and will be discussed for the next 2 days is how the control of our life force is designed to keep us separate from the embodiment of who we are as creator beings, because we do create this reality. It's as simple as this. If you look at quantum physics over the course of this century, one of the primary foundations that it has discovered about looking at material energy and material matter is that the object that is observed cannot be separate from the observer. This is true when they look at subatomic particles, that when the observer looks at an object, it affects that object. So if this is true on the subatomic level, how much truer is it on the atomic, the molecular, the whole system of our bodies and the planet itself? What this translates to is we are essentially what I call a biocrystalline virtual reality projection unit. We project reality. Now, if we do that individually, what is it like if we do that collectively with 250 million Americans in this country, or 5 to 6 billion people on this planet? If that capacity to project reality can be controlled and artificially maintained, then the reality that's projected is going to be separated from those projection units. Does that make sense? Okay. What it is essentially is we are a microcosm, and we have an exact blueprint of the larger whole systems that we are in, the Earth, the universe, and so forth. And what I have discovered over the years of my internal as well as external exploration is that there are direct correspondences to that whole system that we are. For example, we have, in the physical body, we have 7 chakras that we work with, right? Well, I spent with my wife a few years ago living 2 years in the Hawaiian Islands, and we discovered, for example, that the Hawaiian Islands have 7 principal islands, and there was a direct correspondence energetically with the nature of our system, our embodied system, with the 7 chakras that we create through, and the Hawaiian Islands. It was a little microcosm or a macrocosm in relationship to the physical body that we all have. Additionally, the planet itself has 7 continents. So as we shift our embodiment and take our power into ourselves, the external form on the planetary level will start reconstructing itself. And that's the most important thing about anything that you study, whether it's physical health, emotional cleansing, emotional healing, mental structures, mental models, law, and all the rest of it. And the rest of my talk, I'm going to go through various aspects of this, leading up to how this applies to us in this country, in the United States, and the nature of what we have the uniqueness of the construction of this country and how that gives us here a very important role to play in the transformation that's been talked about and that we will continue to talk about. One other example that I want to give is if you've heard of what happens when you take a group of clocks with pendulums and you put them in a whole room. Say you have 500 clocks in this room instead of 500 human beings, and you start the pendulums completely at random and you leave the room. If you come back 6 or 8 hours later, what you're going to find is all of the pendulums are entrained and working in synchronicity. That sympathetic vibration or harmonic vibration, they all entrain with each other. It's the same with the human organism, with us as a virtual reality projection unit. This is what the whole issue is with frequency control, is how to entrain us so that we follow the party platform and project what is desired to be projected, which is the separate reality that maintains fear, separation, and all the rest of it. The issue is, when we go back to that first phrase, that which is broken can never be fixed. When you're looking at the system as it exists, as it is broken, it can never be fixed. The whole idea of the whole control mechanisms through frequency and otherwise is to keep our focus on what is broken. And what that does is it creates the polarity. It separates us from our projection or our reality that we're creating. When it does that, for example, the statement, there are no enemies, there are only opportunities. It keeps us in a polarity. It keeps us separate, and it keeps the enemy outside of ourselves. When we understand that there are only opportunities, then everything that occurs to us, as Barbara said last night, she was talking about anything, whether it's the physical problems of cancer or otherwise, then it is not the enemy, it is the opportunity. It is the opportunity for us to return to wholeness, to return back to who we are as powerful creator beings who have always been creating this reality. So when we focus on what is real, which is who we are, the love in our hearts, and all the rest of that, then we start recreating that. We start rediscovering that. So in the nature of a whole system, we live in a universe. We have many star systems that we interact with. One of them is called the Pleiades. One is called the Sirius star system. One is Orion. There are many others. And what we have discovered in our internal exploration is that there again is a correspondence between the internal structure that we are and the externalized whole systems that we live in. For example, the Pleiades has approximately 250 stars according to astronomy. And one day before I knew that fact, I asked in my mind, how many stars exactly are in the Pleiadian system? And the answer that I got was 256. And when I looked at that number and I started thinking about it, I realized that it was an exact harmonic of the number of codons in our genetic code. We have 64 codons in the genetic code. 64 times 4 is 256. This is just a little example, and I've done a lot more numerical and geometric exploration of that, which we will go into much more in depth in the workshop, and is also written about in one of my other books, which we have here also. Sirius, as another example, it has been discovered by astronomy that the exact path that Sirius makes in relationship to our solar system inscribes the exact helical nature of our DNA structure. So we have projected outside of ourselves a genetic matrix within the Pleiadian system, and we have the helical structure of that DNA code in the relationship that we have with the Sirius star system. Additionally, Orion, as perhaps some of you know, has been explored and looked at as holding the nature of polarity. It has 3 stars in the belt of Orion, which are called El, An, and Ra. El and Ra hold the light and the dark. An holds the balance of the two, or the spiral nature, which also reflects back to the spiral nature of the balance of life within the helical structure of the DNA. The Earth has been referred to as a living library. But if you have a library, you have to have a library card. Do you know what the library card is? It is your genetics. And the entire game on this planet has been about controlling the genetics of our bodies. That is the issue. That is the bottom line. And when we talk about control, we're not even talking about law or monetary systems or the rest of that. What we're really talking about is the control of our life force. And if they control our life force, they control our embodiments, they control our genetics. And through that, they think that they can have access to the library of the Earth. But they can't, because they have to be truly a part of it. And what has happened in the course of a long, drawn-out history is all of these so-called creator gods, the gods externalized, which are really our own projection outside of ourselves, of our own authority and our own Godhead, that once they entered into the system of the Earth, they became part of it. Their destiny, their karma, was also part of the Earth's. Once they started interacting energetically, sexually, and all the rest of that with humans, they became part of it. The reason they are now in human bodies is they are stuck here as much as, quote unquote, we are stuck. So the only way out for them is in. The only way out for us is in. There is no solution outside of ourselves. So when you talk about the issue of what's going on here, like with Clinton or all the rest of it, the bottom line is this is all very appropriate. Because who are these beings who are the leaders? Well, they're the same ones who have been here over and over again, playing out the Godhead, the God spell of who we thought was the creators outside of ourselves. So within the context of our relationship to the larger cosmos, as Barbara was saying last night, we rotate, this solar system rotates around a central sun. We do a precession of the equinox. We also go around a central sun. That central sun is called Alcyon, which is the central sun of the Pleiades. As you may know, the Pleiades have been referred to for a long time as the Seven Sisters. There are 7 visible stars in the Pleiadian system, even though it's a cluster of over 200 stars. But they've always been referred to as the Seven Sisters. Really, energetically, they hold 7 vibrational tones. And if you know anything about music, you know that the 8th tone is the completion. It's the octave. It's the return to the starting point. We are that octave. We are that completion. We revolve around the Pleiades every 26,000 years. Every 13,000 years, we enter into a super excited state, which is known as the photon belt. When we're in the photon belt, the physical, electrical level of our physical embodiment starts getting into a super excited state. If our consciousness that has projected outside of itself is not truly in alignment with that creation, that projection outside of ourselves, we cannot maintain that consciousness and we cannot hold form when we move into that super excited state. This is what has happened over and over again. And when we talk about Atlantis 13,000 years ago, we fell quite dramatically in consciousness at that time. Is that bad or is that good? Well, it depends how you look at it. There are no enemies, there are only opportunities. Some information that I received about 9 years ago was that approximately just under 59,000 years ago, and when I looked at it and figured it out, it was also when we were in the age of Taurus, aligned with the Pleiades, there was a consciousness impulsed to our planet. It is what I call, and other people call, the Christos, what we could call the Christ body. Not necessarily the Christ as we know it, but the Christ body is basically the capstone of our consciousness. It is the unifying field that unifies the completion of what we have created here. When you superimpose a unified field over a chaotic field, that chaotic field will try to entrain itself to that unified field. But if the physical realm and the consciousness in that realm, which is us, is not in alignment with what it has created, then to the relative degree that that gap exists between the consciousness and the world that it has created, there will be a fall in consciousness. So when this happened 59,000 years ago, it started a unifying process, and it also started a purification process, because our consciousness was dramatically gapped or separate from what we had created. And of course, the control systems that we've talked about the last couple of days have been in place for 400,000 years and more. So we're talking about a significant separation between our divine selves and that physical aspect that we have carried through all these years. So 52,000 years ago, we also went through a cleansing process, as we did 39,000, 26, and 13,000 years ago. The Hopi and the Hopi prophecy talk about 5 purification cycles. The first one was 52,000 years ago. So as an example, if you cut yourself very deeply, say on your arm, and you sew that up, the cut up, but underneath where you've closed it off, you have a very deep infection, you're going to have to reopen that cut so that the infection can be cleansed out, so it can come up to the surface. Some of the people who have talked about healing have talked about the fact that it comes out of the body. It must be released. So the same with our consciousness, and the same with our creation or our projection of consciousness here in the physical sphere of the planet. So because our separation from our divine selves was so dramatic, we could not do that in one fell swoop. If we did that, we would have blown the whole thing up. So it required 5 purification cycles. The first one was 52,000 years ago, the next 3 in increments of 13,000, and now we are in the last purification cycle. So the most important point to understand about this is that most people look at the world today and think it is really bad, and there's no question it is not so good. It's not what we would want it to be. But the nice thing about it, or the most important thing about it, is that it is required, because we have brought up all of the separation in our consciousness in the material creation, the material manifestation of our lives, our physical lives, our emotional lives, our mental lives, our national lives, and our global lives, environmentally, politically, economically, the whole ball of wax. So this is the last purification cycle. In order to purify and cleanse it, we had to have it on the surface. Look around you. Do you think we've done a good job in bringing it up to the surface? So then we go to the third statement, which is the devil knows not who he serves, which is that if we're calling the devil that which is life-negating, which is those men and potentially some women, but I think mostly men this time around, who have created the systems of control and all of the rest of the degradation that has been manifested on this plane in pursuing their own agenda. Well, in a higher context, what they have actually done is facilitated bringing up all of that which is misaligned, miscreated, dysfunctional, and not in alignment with who we are individually and collectively as divine beings. And divinity is only that which is life-enhancing. So we're not talking about gods or angels or all the rest of it. We're simply talking about that which is life-enhancing. So the other aspect of the devil knows not who he serves is that it has created a master blueprint for us to transform. the material plane that is out there, even though it served another agenda in arriving to the point where we have now arrived at, will very rapidly be transformable. How will that be transformed? By the internal capacity in our own beings. Because as a whole system, we have a holographic recreation or representation of the whole system, of the larger whole, the Earth itself. So then as we look at the last 13,000 years, what I have noticed is that the last 13,000 years, apparently, as we were taught, nothing existed. There was no human activity before then, even, say, 10,000 years ago. And then it started from scratch, from nothing, and arrived to where we are 10,000 years later. Well, what we had to do is, because when Atlantis fell 13,000 years ago and our slate was wiped clean, the fourth purification cycle occurred, and our consciousness literally fell to the furthest level, gapped or separated from who we were, that we had to literally start over. So in order to perfect the last purification cycle, we needed to geometrically recreate the entire system. So the entire fractal of the last 10,000 years in time is a larger scale, or a smaller scale of the larger scale of the entire cycle that we've been in since the beginning of this whole game. And if you look at history, you will see that. You will see the patterns. And it was required that we arrive at this point where we occupy the 7 continents of this Earth, and that we have internally the mechanisms to perfect the whole Earth. So there's one very important thing in the course of that history that I want to look at, which is the structure that we have today globally for the control of the system. It started in the 8th century when the Vatican decided and created a papal bull that said that a person could not access their own soul except through the priests or through the church. So that was the beginning of insurance, because to ensure our entry into heaven, we had to pay obeisances, indulgences, tithes, and all the rest of that. The Vatican was setting itself up as the godhead of the planet. In the year 1066, William the Conqueror came into England, the British Isles, and conquered that land and created what is still today called the City of London, which is separate from the larger city that we know as London. It's a 1-mile square enclave. And in that city was created all of the banking and political structures that continue to control the planet today. Next, the United States was formed. And in the workshop that I will be doing Monday morning, I will go much more extensively into the entire structure of how the United States was formed, what the working elements, what the foundations of that structure was and what it is, and how it has been distorted and subverted to what we have today. But again, remember, there are no enemies, only opportunities. What we have today is the opportunity to regain our power. And the devil knows not who he serves. Whatever has been distorted in the last 220 years is our opportunity now and serves a higher agenda. So when the United States was formed, the third element of the global structure was put in place, which was a tripartite, 3 city-states that would control the Earth: the Vatican, the City of London, and Washington, D.C. The Vatican operates through what's called canon law. The City of London, when it eventually took over the British Crown in the mid-1700s, when the British Crown was put into bankruptcy, which might be a surprise for you all, controlled what's called kingdom law through the Crown. And Washington, D.C., through a process that led eventually to 1933, when the United States was put into bankruptcy, created a structure that is what's called commercial law, the control of commercial structure. What this is this external projection and reflection of our own 3-bodied system: the physical, the emotional, and the mental body. Again, we are a whole system. It's reflecting outside of ourselves. This is the power structure that we really have, because how we create is through the physical, the emotional, and mental. When they're aligned and in synergy, that's how we create. That's how we draw up from the physical realm. We create form with the mind, and we energize it with the power of our emotional body, which is love. How many of you knew that in 1933 the United States filed bankruptcy? Okay. How many of you knew that that United States was not the same United States that started in 1776? Oh, more than I expected. Well, specifically on February 21st, 1871, Congress formed a United States corporation. And to make a very long story short, because I have 10 minutes left, which we will get into much more in depth in my workshop, how things have progressed since then. And the bottom line is everybody in this room, most everybody, and almost everybody in this country are corporate body entities. They are part of that corporate entity that in 1933 was forced into bankruptcy and put into a commercial structure to control the paper reality that has become the global monetary system, which again, obviously would take a little bit more than the 8 minutes I have left to go into how that works. But we will do that on the workshop, and also in the 2 books that I have here, I go extensively into how this actually works. But the bottom line is there's something called a cesta trust, which means, by definition, a trust that someone has a beneficial interest, a limited beneficial interest, while the title of that trust belongs and is held by someone else. You all are cesta trusts. You have a limited beneficial interest in utilizing the franchise that you are in order to interact at a subsistence level in your life and to be controlled through that commercial reality. So you have a tripartite system, the Vatican controlling the emotional body, going all the way back to that first point of creating that separation as they created the dictum that you must access your soul through the church. And then the kingdom law, which is sort of the mental body. And if you think about the British Empire and how it's been structured to control everything, there you have that 3-part system. Again, remember, that which is broken, which I'm describing now briefly, can never be fixed. If you focus on it, rather than shifting your consciousness to focus on what's real, which is that you have the power to hold all of that authority and that creative force within yourself. Actually, you know, it's 4:45 and I didn't start till 10 after 4 because Chip went. So I should have some more time, don't you all think? I brought my clock to make sure, because I'm just getting into the good stuff. So, with the externalization, see, the whole thing comes down to this, that because we were so far gapped from our consciousness, from our understanding of who we really were and are, we needed literally to create all of this outside of ourselves so that at first we would polarize, and at a certain point we would understand that polarity is not the name of the game. Because in fact, as far as the energetic and frequency control on the planet, we were stuck and purposefully stopped. Like you take a wrench and you put it in a gearworks and you stop that machinery, that we were stopped in a specific progression of the perfecting of our bodies and the perfecting of the realm. In numerical structure, in numerology, it is always spoken about that the sequence 1 through 9 is a completion cycle. Rudolf Steiner, who lived the end of last century through up until sometime near the Second World War, talked about root races. Nothing to do with genetic races, but the developing races that the human species developed over a period of time. He talked about 5 root races. The first four are called the Hyperborean. No, excuse me. The Polarian is the first, the Hyperborean, the Lemurian, and the Atlantean. These four root races created and perfected, or were supposed to perfect, are four planetary bodies. The Polarian is the etheric body, and as you can tell by the name, Polarian, polarity. When we come into the physical realm through the etheric envelope, we created a polarity in order to create form. Next, the Hyperborean body created the physical, the Lemurian the emotional, and the Atlantean the mental. The fifth root race body that he talked about was called the Aryan. And if you look at sacred geometry and the nature of how form is constructed, 5 is a very powerful number and a powerful structure. It is organic life. If you look at your physical body, you create a pentagram with 5 appendages. If you look at Leonardo's perfected man, that very famous drawing, it shows that very specifically in geometric form. And so the Aryan race was designed to unify and integrate through organic life the first 4 races. And I'm not going to go into the rest of the detail. Again, we'll go into it in the workshop. But where we got stuck is the Orions, who again held the polarity in the 3 stars in the belt. They came in and they overlaid the Orion Aryan, and they created that gap in our consciousness. What they stopped us from doing is completing the last 4 root race bodies. The next 2 embody and perfect the Christ body. The names that we got for these, the 6th root race body, is called the Borealian. Borealis talks about the interaction between the solar wind and the magnetic field of our body, of the planetary body. We too have that capacity to interact through our magnetic field with the solar wind or the solar intelligence, because fractally, geometrically, our progression in consciousness goes from the planetary system through the solar consciousness, and the solar consciousness rotates around the central sun, completing the octave. And that central sun is the Pleiades, or one of the Pleiades, and the other 6 are the other 6 stars of the Pleiades. So the perfection of our whole system was stopped. What we are doing now in a very accelerated period is completing the other 4 root races. The 8th root race is called the Octarian. Now, I didn't tell you the 7th. The 7th is called the Corpuscular, which comes from the Latin word corpus, which is body. It's also the root for the word corpuscle, the corpuscle of our red blood, which has a hemoglobin in its center. Hema is iron, globin is sphere. What do we have in the center of our planet? We have a hemoglobin. We have a liquid crystalline sphere of iron. So when we embody the Christ body, the unifying, completing body of our consciousness to that stage, we then have complete access to the center of the planet, or the grounding of the planet. And when our 3 centers, our 3 bodies, are completely aligned with the etheric and then the 3 physical forms, then we have no separation or gap between who we are in physical form and who we are in a whole consciousness form. So we can come and go at will in our consciousness, leaving the body and coming back. So the entire system of control of our physical body, our monetary systems, and religious systems, emotional systems, and all the rest of it is designed to keep us from accessing that. But again, there are no enemies, right? Only opportunities. What we have today is the opportunity to see this and to know the truth. And there was a statement made, whomever said it, I don't know, it was passed on to us, that know the truth and the truth will set you free. So what we're talking about is knowing the truth. Everything that you learn about government or monetary systems, or all of this stuff about our health systems and all the rest of it, is only to know the truth, not to polarize with it and create an enemy outside of yourself, but to understand the opportunity afforded by it to bring it back home. into your whole system. Thank you. Truth restructures reality. You have no other ability, no other weapon, if you will, to fight what's going on outside of ourselves out there. They have all the guns, they have all the money, they have all the military and all the rest of it. But you see, they are stuck here. And in effect, they, whoever they are we, they are trying to find the way out as well. So when we stand in our truth, whether it's here in what we're doing here, or we go into a courtroom, or we talk to anybody on the street, and we say what we know to be true, and we hold that truth and we ground it, and we have alignment in our three centers, then what happens is those three externalized centers that I described, that tripartite three city-states, starts losing its power. And what you're seeing today is the implosion of that. Because when lack of truth, or that life-negating force that's embodied in those externalized forms, loses the substrata of support of who we are as the virtual reality projecting units that have sustained it, when that grid system or support is withdrawn, and it is automatically withdrawn when you embody your truth and you embody your wholeness, then it starts imploding on itself. At the same time, there is a tremendous backlog, if you will, or reservoir of energy that will collapse into one true reality, which of course is always divine, which is always life-enhancing. And when you get down to it, when you talk about law, there is only one law that I know that I can align with, which is that thou shalt exalt all life and honor the life force in all beings. If you think about that, there is no other law. There's nothing more to be said about law. But we have a little cleanup to do. So what I've done in the last 8 years is study law and study history and study the American system. And what I have found is there is almost a complete structural integrity to what they have created, what is referred to as the corporate structure, going back to 1871 and the control of the American system through creating corporate fictions, which is what the Cestacade Trust is. How that holds together is all law is contract. If I make an agreement with somebody to deliver a product and he's going to pay me a certain amount, we create law. We bind ourselves to that contract. If I breach the contract, then we have an element in controversy that we must go to an outside party to adjudicate. That's what it's supposed to be as far as the law system and the judicial system in this country. What you have today is not that. What you have today is an entirely different system in which you, as corporate fictions, are being adjudicated according to the public policy that fits within the corporate structure. Whether you're in there addressing an issue of health, the FDA, or monetary systems, the SEC, or the Federal Reserve, or whatever, see, you can't go in there and argue apples to oranges. Because if you think you're in a constitutional context, you're not. You're in a public policy context. So how that holds together, again, is a long story that we'll go into in my workshop. But the essence of it is contract. And this operates in the American system, it operates in the global system, it operates in the interplanetary, the cosmic system. All these beings who are here at some level have a contract. And they are bonded by that contract. And when I go in and work with people in law and the people that I'm associated with, what we start with is that the judges and the officials and the secretaries of state and the presidents of the country and so forth have bonded themselves by oath, by contract, to uphold certain things. And what's happening is they are being imploded upon themselves because their contracts and their vows or oaths are coming to roost. Again, when you stand in the truth, when you know the truth and you know the law, it forces that back upon them. And just as I talked about history and time as a fractal, fractal means the same ratio, different scale. so that 1 is to 10, the same that 10 is to 100. So in a fractal, as a whole system, I can work on all this within myself and change the external form. When we work collectively, we have an incredible force to do that. So in that nature of a fractal geometry, what we have on this planet is the same fractal as what's going on cosmically. Barbara talked about the reptilians. Well, when Robert Morningsky comes here, he will talk about the Lizard Queen. The Lizard Queen is in Orion. She thinks she owns this place. She also has associates who are coming here, who are already here, thinking that they're closing escrow. We've been in escrow for a long time. They think it's time to close escrow. But you know that, fractally speaking, if there's a Lizard Queen out there, then we have one here. When you understand the nature of the history that I've just briefly gone over as it applies to the American system in relationship to the British Crown, and so forth, what it all boils down to is who the British Crown is, and who controls the British Crown, and how the British Crown controls the empire that is constructed through that three-part system that I described. Who's queen? Queen Liz. You see the opportunity? There is no enemy there. There is an opportunity. And there is only one tool we have, which is our own beingness, our own wholeness, and our truth. So, that which is broken can never be fixed. What we're describing here when we talk about that system or they is what is broken, what is misaligned and has been miscreated by the life-negating forces that have been allowed by us to have reign on this planet up until now. But if we focus on what is real, which is the life-affirming, the life-enhancing aspects of who we are as divine beings, then we will create what is real. And that is our only objective. That is the only thing that we need to do. That's all that is left. Because we are in the last phases of the complete transformation. The purification that I talked about is almost complete, even though it looks at its worst right now. So it is interesting to think about that aspect, our own Lizard Queen on the planet, in relationship to some of the events that have occurred in the last, what has it been, 4, 5, 6 months. When Princess Diana was murdered, as I'm sure that's no surprise to be stated that way to this group, it began a shift in consciousness that will not stop until that shift is complete. So I do agree with what Barbara said last night, that we do have a choice, that we can go towards tyranny or we go towards freedom. But on another level, I know absolutely that it's not even an issue of choice. I know that we've already completed what we are here to do. Now it is simply a matter within the linear construct of time to finish it up. What I've noticed in my own life in the last 12 months is that that real world is starting to form, to come into substance. And the rest is really starting to fade away, and it is very tangible in my experience, and it is quite incredible. The work that I do, which I will also talk about in the workshop, and I'm available over there at the table, has to do with new systems that are coming onto the planet. They've already been here as far as I'm concerned. We have been building these for years etherically in our consciousness while we created the matrix to receive it. So as we focus on what is real, the rest will definitely fade away. And the occurrence of Diana's death is imploding that structure within the focal point of the British Crown. So the systems that I'm talking about are new governmental systems, new monetary systems, new systems of resources, because Buckminster Fuller said that we are all millionaires. We have all collectively extended out of ourselves, out of our effort, our energy, out of our planetary body collectively, an entire matrix of the physical realm. It is very, very abundant. It is without limit. It is all manifest, and we have it available. So the only issue is how the transfer mechanism will occur. What I can tell you for a fact, because I am experiencing it now, is the transfer mechanism is starting to accelerate. 2 days from now, what's today? Yeah. On the 22nd, the King of Hawaii, of the Kingdom of Hawaii, will be crowned. There's a coronation event taking place in Oahu. We have the privilege of being close in relationship to him and his assistants. We met him when we were living over there in Hawaii. And to make a long story short, Hawaii was a sovereign nation 105 years ago. It was overthrown by the United States as part of its global agenda. And it has been held in that position for that entire period. In the last 20 years or so, a sovereignty movement to regain the sovereign status of the islands has been unfolding. This person has the most direct lineage and genealogy to be the king. And it's not a matter, he is the most understated person you would ever want to meet. There's not a lot of ego. There's not a lot of personal agenda. It is for what is right and proper for the Hawaiian people, the Hawaiian Islands, and what the Hawaiian Islands will mean for the rest of the globe. Because remember, I mentioned just briefly that just as we have 7 planetary systems through the chakras, globally we have 7 of those embodied in the physical continents. Hawaii is also a holographic representation of that. Genetically, the Hawaiian people hold that as a resonant form. When they unify those islands and what they intend to do to form new systems, monetary systems, resource systems, governing systems, and so forth, is going to be extraordinary. And this is only one of many things that are taking place right now. We'll talk about that more during the workshop, or read my books. So I'm going to end with 2 more poems. The first one is dedicated to Princess Diana. I wrote it 10 months before her death, and then I realized about 30 days after her death who I wrote it for. So as I read it, I would like you to really take in the words and understand who is speaking, and to hold the resonant form and ground it in, and to invite that energy and that presence in. It's called The Huntress. Today, I am the huntress. Today, my hunt begins. I hunt not out of hunger, anger, or fear. I hunt not out of sorrow, pity, or grief. I hunt only for my soul bids me so. I hunt from the sinew and bone of my flesh that vibrates to the atomic bonds that bind me to this earth. And with each step I take stalking amidst the shadows of this world, I resonate to the heartthrob of the tides within my veins. I seek prey so unprepared to become the target of my hunt. I am the victory of this world. I am the huntress ere the breaking of the dawn. What fathomless distance of years could ever measure the hunger of this world? The starving multitudes spread like a tapestry of intricately woven souls. Emaciated limbs broken like the branches of a withering tree. Sparks of life dying amidst angry embers of countless forgotten fires extinguished in the night. Hollow sounds that do not echo far enough to reach the hearts of men, ensconced in their shallow dreams of power. Yea, though in their silly dreams they forget to check the hour. The huntress never rests. The huntress never forgets. And as the moment grows near, when such consummate fear shall explode with strength and fury in the minds of such as these, who shall be gathered like the leaves of all the forests and all the trees laid to waste by their callous machine, I shall be there to see that they have only the endless abyss of their empty souls from which to seek solace, as I strike to tear the breath from their gasping throats. Nay, say I, should you think that I hunt out of anger, hunger, or fear, think only that I hunt, for this is my will. I hunt for the moment that draws near. I am the dissolution of this dream. I am the disillusion of all hearts, ere the trembling hand lifts the last of this world's lingering veils. And can the stars of the moonless midnight sky number the depths of sorrows encumbered upon this world? Can you not count the limitless pools of pain and passion, whereupon the reflection of such sorrow mirrors the sadness in my eyes, like gathering nimbus in my skies, to drown out the folly that I despise? To send torrents and tempests that seek the seas, to spend my fury without pity, to wash the wastelands where once stood trees, to bring the power of this world trembling to its knees. I shall hunt them to the ends of my earth. I shall hunt them to the ends of my earth. I shall engulf them in the pangs of my birth. Today I am the huntress, nameless though not unknown. For my visage shall be inscribed upon the hearts of all whom I seek, whereby the weak shall be revived, and my own heart revitalized. And those who once called themselves lords shall limp limpless, listless to the doors of their own redemption. Their own lies emblazoned across their chests like ribbons from their forgotten wars. Stripped of all pretense, they shall be men no more. Today I am the huntress, and I shall hunt them to the ends of my earth. And this one I dedicate to all of you and to everybody who walks upon this earth. And as I read this poem, if you could also take it into your heart and expand your heart to engulf and to enfold the entire earth, that we will send this out to all beings on this earth. It is called The Living Light. That you might be the living light of love, for this have you come to walk upon this ground, that you may taste of the fruits and the abundance of all that lay before you, to imbibe the simple draught of love that shall nourish and sustain you, that shall quench the thirst that has pursued you throughout these years, that will wash over you as the waters of the clouds that pour forth their living breath to cleanse and purify. All this and much more, for this have you come. To be as the radiant ones, standing forth, fully clothed with the raiments of heaven, woven upon the loom of this earthly plane. To touch sweet innocence and ignite your heart more brilliant than the brightest sun, each and every living cell like unto the whole, so that the greatest and the smallest shall be as one. For this have you come. Beribboned with joy like a summer prize, thus shall you be, resplendent and free, in all manner of ways, countless as the stars of the night, the droplets of the seas, gentle as the summer breeze and tender touch, ever much like unto the child that you are, grand as the magnificence of a star that sparkles with your one and only light, forever into day and night. For this have you come. Bluest of blue and deepest of deep shall lay gentle upon your mind as you fold softly into sleep. The richness of sky and the fathomless sea, to these shall you cast the burden of your fears, the sorrow of your years. And after winter, so too comes the spring, and the birds shall sing, and the sun shall rise, the grass spread evergreen upon the hills of yonder dell, where shall rise a citadel wrought of crystalline glass, where shall never pass any heart saddened or stained, nor memory twisted or pained. For this have we brought witness to the singing streams and the laughing winds and the running deer. For this are we here. For this have you come. That you might be the living light of love upon which all eyes might peer, unadorned and ever clear, radiant as the one sent forth from the sun, recognized as we, known again for all to see, all glory in all laughter and in all tears, glory in touch and taste and sound and smell. For this we shall know so well, in every nerve and every cell, singing clear as the bell that rings from on yonder tower, and thus shall each glowing heart know the hour, be it ever present in every breath, every breath, every breath. For this have you come. Oh, indeed, for this have you come. Thank you.